A very good evening to our esteemed guests, colleagues, and dear students. My name is Prafullata Bhardwaj. I'm a lecturer and an assistant dean at Jindal Global Law School. It is an honor to welcome you all amongst this august gathering of our distinguished speakers to this very special evening dedicated to Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj inaugural memorial lecture on law, democracy, and the idea of India. Today we have with us Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of Parliament Lok Sabha, Honorable Mr. Justice Ashok Mathur, former Judge, the Supreme Court of India, family members of Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj, Mr. Arun Bhardwaj, Senior Advocate, Dr. Prafullata Bhardwaj, and Mr. Karan Bhardwaj, and our founding Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. C. Raj Kumar. We have gathered today to celebrate the life of Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj and revisit our fond memories of him. Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj, former governor of Karnataka from 2009 to 2014, and Kerala from 2012 to 2013, former Union Minister of Law and Justice from 2004 till 2009, an inspirational leader, eminent lawyer, humanitarian, educationist, and politician, leaves behind a remarkable legacy. A lawyer by profession, designated as a senior advocate by the Supreme Court of India on 7th March 2000, Dr. Bhardwaj was born in the village Garhi in Haryana. He completed his schooling at GBC High School, Rohtak, and pursued higher education at BM College, Shimla, and also at Agra University and Punjab University, obtaining his MA, LLB, and a doctorate. In a legal and political career spanning over 5 decades, Dr. Bhardwaj was widely credited with possessing an acute appreciation for the intersection between law and politics. As five-time Member of Parliament in Rajya Sabha from 1982 till 2009, Dr. Bhardwaj served under the Prime Ministers Sri Rajiv Gandhi, Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, and Dr. Manmohan Singh. During his entire tenure, Dr. Bhardwaj served as the Minister of Law and Justice, Minister of State from 1984 till 1989, Senior Vice President, Institute of Constitutional and Parliamentary Studies from 1984 till 1989, Minister of State Independent Charge in the Ministry of Planning and Program Implementation from 1991 to 1992, Minister of Law, Justice and Company Affairs from 1992 to 1996, Parliamentary Committee of Privileges in Rajya Sabha from 1998 till 2004, Committee on Home Affairs in 2000, Advisory Council of the Delhi Development Authority from 2002 till 2004, and Business Advisory Committee from 2004 till 2009. Dr. Bhardwaj has authored various books, including Law, Lawyers and Judges in 1997, Crime, Criminal Justice and Human Rights in 2001, Soul of India, Nehru Gazing at Tomorrow in 2014, With Three Prime Ministers, Reminiscences 2016, and Politics, Religion and Judiciary in India in 2018. Dr. Bhardwaj also played a founding role in establishing the International Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution, ICADR, and has been at the helm of legal and judicial reforms, including women's right to property, introduction of rural courts for doorstep justice, reservation for women in the House of People and legislative assemblies, perks and privileges for judiciary, amongst many more. Dr. Bhardwaj is survived by his wife, Srimati Dr. Prafullata Bhardwaj, his son, Sri Arun Bhardwaj, who's a senior advocate, daughters Srimati Vandita and Srimati Vinita, and grandchildren Sri Karan Bhardwaj, who's an advocate, and Sri Gautam Bhardwaj, who's also an advocate. Now, I would like to invite Professor Dr. C. Raj Kumar, Founding Vice Chancellor, OP Jindal Global University and Dean, Jindal Global Law School, to deliver the welcome address. It is the incredible vision and inspiring leadership of Professor Dr. C. Raj Kumar that OP Jindal Global University has become an institution of eminence and has achieved many illustrious milestones, of which the most recent one is making into the top 500 universities in the world. Professor Rajkumar, I humbly request you to kindly deliver the welcome address and introduce the vision for celebrating the legacy of Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj.
Thank you, Professor Tandon. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you today. It's a very, very special occasion as we celebrate the life and the legacy and contribution of an extraordinary individual, Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj. We are indeed here to have the inaugural memorial lecture on the theme Law, Democracy, and the Idea of India. No other than Dr. Shashi Tharoor has accepted to deliver this inaugural memorial lecture. We will come back to it in a minute. I want to thank Dr. Tharoor for taking time out of his schedule and travels to deliver this lecture. I also want to extend a warm welcome to Honorable Mr. Justice Ashok Mathur, former judge of the Supreme Court of India, for accepting our invitation to deliver the presidential address. I can't thank enough when it comes to Dr. Prafullata Bhardwaj, the wife of Dr. Bhardwaj, and his son, Mr. Arun Bhardwaj, and Gautam, all of whom are present here for indeed, sharing this legacy. Now, of course, much has been said about Dr. Bhardwaj's contributions, including his various political and other, positions he has held. But for me, Dr. Bhardwaj was no ordinary man, and indeed for JGU. Our destinies were deeply connected to Mr. Bhardwaj, who was a very dear and close friend of the father of our founding Chancellor and benefactor, Sri O.P. Jindal. Our Chancellor, Mr. Jindal, always considered Dr. Bhardwaj as his mentor and was somebody who believed in our Chancellor and always stood for the Jindal family and supported the family in all their endeavors all these years. Dr. Bhardwaj's close ties with the Jindal family and our Chancellor's father had withstood the test of time, including many trials and tribulations that only made their family-level friendship and relationship even more stronger. No wonder Mr. Naveen Jindal was deeply inspired by the suggestion and indeed his vision of Dr. Bhardwaj to establish O.P. Jindal Global University as a philanthropic initiative and tribute to Sri O.P. Jindal. Dr. Bhardwaj, as it was said before, worked very closely with 4 prime ministers. He held the record of having the second longest tenure in the law ministry since independence after Sri Ashok Kumar Sen. As far as our university is concerned, Mr. Bhardwaj's association was foundational, substantive, and deeply engaging. At every stage of the process of institution building, from the passing of the legislation by the government of Haryana to the approval of the Bar Council of India, Dr. Bhardwaj walked the talk with us and led the effort with his personal commitment and dedication that took this effort to its logical conclusion. He helped us overcome every challenge that we faced in journey with integrity, rectitude, and professionalism. Dr. Bhardwaj visited our campus numerous times and always took very keen interest in the progress of the university from its founding. His most recent visit to the campus, along with his wife, was on 30th September 2019, when we were celebrating our University Day and the 10th anniversary of our university. He and his wife came to our campus for the functions and stayed with us for several hours, encouraging and supporting us to mark 10 years of institution building at JGU. But let me quickly take a moment to share the story of JGU's founding. I met Dr. Bhardwaj for the first time on 10th August 2006 in relation to an international conference on access to justice, law, policy, and institutions, jointly hosted by the Yale Law School, a society that I was heading, the Legal Education Research Society, and the United Nations Development Program. He inaugurated the conference. On the sidelines of the conference, I, for the first time, talked to Dr. Bhardwaj about the idea of such a university when he was the then law minister. He invited me to visit his home, and I met him for the first time at his home on 14th August 2006. I very vividly remember it was a Monday, and he said he will give me 20 minutes to talk about his idea. We spent 2.5 hours at his ministerial home. It was 14 Tuklak Road. And that was, a very momentous occasion. And I could simply say the rest was history. A lot happened since then. And he persuaded Mr. Jindal to essentially create this philanthropic initiative in the form of the university. And I don't need to speak more about it. So on behalf of the 8,000 plus students of JGU, over 1,000 full-time faculty members of our university, over 1,000 staff, over 5,000 alumni, nearly 25,000 parents of the students and alumni of the university, and over 15,000 families who are indeed dependent on the university living around the campus in Sonipat, I would like to express our deep felt gratitude to Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj for his numerous contributions to institution building and nation building, especially for inspiring our Chancellor, Mr. Jindal, to establish O.P. Jindal Global University. Dr. Bhardwaj's contribution will be always part of the history and evolution of JGU. Last but not the least, let me express my heartfelt gratitude to his wife, Mrs. Prafullata Bhardwaj, her son, Mr. Arun Bhardwaj, and the entire family for their encouragement and support all these years. Now, today we are marking a very special occasion as we begin the process of celebrating his legacy in numerous forms, and we've identified 5 different ways by which we will do this. First was to institute the Shri H.R. Bhardwaj annual lecture series on a chosen theme in the honor and memory of Shri H.R. Bhardwaj. That is happening today. We have also decided to institute the Shri H.R. Bhardwaj Memorial Gold Medal to be awarded to a student of Jindal Global Law School who stands first in the course on constitutional law on an annual basis at the university convocation ceremony. Third, to institute the Shri H.R. Bhardwaj annual moot court competition on a chosen area in the honor and memory of Shri H.R. Bhardwaj. Fourth, to institute the Shri H.R. Bhardwaj International Faculty Fellowship to be awarded to a distinguished young scholar of Jindal Global Law School. And fifth, to institute the Shri H.R. Bhardwaj Scholarship awarded to a student of Jindal Global Law School on an annual basis. With those words, let me move to the next segment of what we are here for, which is to essentially hear Dr. Shashi Tharoor speak about on the theme law, democracy, and the idea of India. But before I formally invite Dr. Tharoor, who does not need introduction, but I'll quickly introduce Dr. Tharoor. Dr. Tharoor is an Indian politician, writer, and a former international diplomat who is currently serving as a member of parliament, Lok Sabha from Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala since 2009. He also serves as chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology and All India Professionals Congress. In 2019, Dr. Tharoor received the Sahitya Academy Award for his book, An Era of Darkness, in a non-fiction category in English language. Born in London, UK, and raised in India, he graduated from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi in 1975 and culminated his studies in 1978 with a doctorate in international relations and affairs with the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University. At the age of 22, quite remarkably, he was the youngest person at the time to receive such an honor from the Fletcher School. From 1978 to 2007, Dr. Tharoor was a career official of the United Nations, rising to the rank of Under-Secretary General for Communications and Public Information in 2001. He is an acclaimed writer, having authored 18 best-selling works of fiction and non-fiction since 1981, which are centered on India and its history, culture, film, politics, society, foreign policy, and many other related themes. He was indeed close to Dr. Bhardwaj, and he'll talk more about it. But before I invite Dr. Bhardwaj, Dr. Tharoor, I'm going to request our IT people to play a short film celebrating the legacy and contribution of Shri H.R. Bhardwaj.
One of India's foremost lawmakers, late Dr. Hansraj Bhardwaj. Born in the village of Gari Sampla, district Rohtak, Haryana. Dr. Bhardwaj had a humble beginning. Born to Shri Jagannath Prasad, a police officer, and Srimati Sarti Devi, a homemaker. Dr. Bhardwaj's father, Shri Jagannath Prasad, was an integral part of the security detail for India's first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. This gave young Hansraj a ringside view and a close understanding of the ongoing process of nation building. His father often spoke of the great virtues of Prime Minister Nehru. Pandit Nehru's ideology of a progressive and an inclusive India inspired Dr. Bhardwaj to become an active supporter of the Indian National Congress. Swami Vivekananda was one of the major influences that shaped his worldview. Dr. Bhardwaj completed his schooling from Gaur School, Rohtak, and then graduated from BM College, Shimla. He also studied at the Agra University and the Punjab University, completing his master's, LLB degree and doctorate. He was multilingual and spoke fluently in several languages, including Hindi, Urdu, Gurmukhi and English. Dr. Bhardwaj also had great depth of knowledge about the teachings of religious scriptures and spirituality. In 1960-61, he completed his LLB, enrolled with the Bar Council of Delhi as an advocate and commenced his legal practice, primarily focusing on criminal trials and appellate work. Dr. Bhardwaj soon established himself as an outstanding defense counsel and appeared in historic criminal cases of the time, including the Dr. Vidya Jain murder case and the Golcha murder case. Emerging as a legal authority on various aspects of criminal and election law, Dr. Bhardwaj got further drawn into politics and became legal advisor to late Srimati Indira Gandhi. In 1971, he was appointed as additional public prosecutor in Delhi. Driven by a strong sense of duty and patriotism, he even spent time at the Indo-Pak border in 1971, serving the community and aiding relief efforts. Upon his return, Dr. Bhardwaj defended Srimati Indira Gandhi before the Shah Commission, Shri Sanjay Gandhi in Kissa Kursi Ka, Chaudhary Bansilal and Shri Vidya Charan Shukla, among many other stalwarts, building a reputation of a fearless and meticulous legal counsel. In May 1981, he was personally asked by Srimati Indira Gandhi to accompany Shri Rajiv Gandhi to Amethi for filing his nomination papers for the upcoming Amethi Lok Sabha by-election. In 1982, Dr. Bhardwaj became a member of Rajya Sabha from the state of Madhya Pradesh. As a young parliamentarian, he participated in several debates, including the debate of vote of thanks to the presidential address. In 1984, in his capacity as Member of Parliament, at these dark times of the tragic Bhopal gas tragedy, Dr. Bhardwaj, along with Justice Bhagwati, personally attended to and visited victims, organized humanitarian and relief efforts. Over the years, Dr. Bhardwaj continued to publicly support for compensation for the victims and families of the Bhopal gas tragedy, both in the media and in Parliament. In January 1985, he was appointed as Minister of State for Law and Justice in the cabinet of Shri Rajiv Gandhi. He had the distinction of being the only minister whose portfolio was not changed for the entire tenure of the government. In 1988, he was once again elected to the Rajya Sabha from Madhya Pradesh. In 1991, he was called on to take charge as Minister of State for Planning and Program Implementation, independent charge in the government of Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, and was later reappointed as Minister of State for Law and Justice. In the wake of liberalization, to make India a global hub for alternative dispute resolution, Dr. Bhardwaj envisaged adopting a mechanism of institutional arbitration. In 1995, Dr. Bhardwaj founded ICADR, the International Center for Alternative Dispute Resolution, under the aegis of the Law Ministry and chief patronage of the Chief Justice of India. An authority on election law, Dr. Bhardwaj was entrusted with integral matters for the Indian National Congress. In the year 2000, he accompanied Srimati Sonia Gandhi for the filing of her Lok Sabha nomination papers for Amethi as her authorized representative. In 2004, He facilitated the Lok Sabha nomination of Srimati Sonia Gandhi and Shri Rahul Gandhi, filed from Raebareli and Amethi. Having built a reputation and global standing as a legal authority, in May 2004, Dr. Bhardwaj was appointed as Cabinet Minister for Law and Justice and remained as such till May 2009. In June 2009, Dr. Bhardwaj was called upon to assume the constitutional post of Governor for the state of Karnataka. In 2012, Dr. Bhardwaj was given additional charge as Governor of Kerala. As Union Minister for Law and Justice, Dr. Bhardwaj was widely credited for upholding separation of powers and judicial autonomy and independence. Recognized as one of India's top legal minds, Dr. Bhardwaj was instrumental in key legislative reforms including women's right to property, the right to information, rights and privileges for judges, reservation for women in parliament and the judiciary, access to justice and digitization of the judicial system. He was also actively involved in the enactment of several new legislations, including the Anti-Defection Law and the Prohibition of Benami Transaction Act 1988. Dr. Hansraj Bhardwaj authored several books covering a spectrum of topics related to governance. Dr. Bhardwaj always emphasized the importance of education, secularism, and institutional building. Some of the institutions he contributed to include ICADR, the present building of the Bar Council, Delhi, OP Jindal Global University. On the 8th of March 2020, Dr. Hansraj Bhardwaj left for his heavenly abode, leaving behind his family to take forward his legacy as a lawyer, a scholar, a humanitarian, an educationist, and most of all, as a compassionate human being.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor. I would like to invite you to deliver the inaugural Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj Memorial Lecture.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Professor C. Raj Kumar, Honorable Justice Ashok Mathur ji, Mrs. Prafullata Bhardwaj, Arun Bhardwaj, Karan Bhardwaj, other distinguished attendees. It really is a pleasure for me to join this evening's impressive gathering and for the opportunity to deliver the inaugural Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj lecture. As we have just heard and seen, the late Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj, to whom we are paying tribute today, had a distinguished political and legal career that can scarcely be matched. I think we've heard an impressive list in the introduction by Pratibha Tandon, so I won't repeat it. His deep knowledge of law was developed through decades of public service, during which, among so many other accomplishments, he served as a 5-term parliamentarian, Union Minister of Law and Justice, and Governor of Karnataka, as well as briefly of my own home state, Kerala. And I'm pleased to say I had interactions with him in all these capacities and after he left public office. I remember in particular his graciously addressing a book launch event of mine in Bangalore in 2013 as governor, which is not something that you expect too many governors to be willing to do. His contributions to legal and judicial reform, such as pressing for women's right to property, the introduction of rural courts, and improving access to justice for all, the Right to Information Act, and fighting for reservations for women in the Lok Sabha and in legislative assemblies, as well as his encouragement, which Professor Raj Kumar has described so well, to our hosts at the Jindal Global University to establish and develop their fine institution, have been of incalculable benefit to social and legal progress in India. There can be no clearer form of contribution to the public good. His legacy through the impact of his work, as well as his authorship of numerous books, looking back on his career and at the challenges of modern India, will live on. It is fitting that one continuing aspect of this legacy will be the Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj Memorial Lecture at JGU. One can only hope to be worthy of this great figure in this inaugural lecture dedicated to his memory. I'm also privileged to be doing so before Justice Ashok Mathur. Beginning his career as a lawyer at the Rajasthan High Court, he rose to become a judge at that court, eventually being appointed Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court, and finally concluding his stellar career by being elevated to the Supreme Court, as well as chairing the 7th Pay Commission and heading the Armed Forces Tribunal. His is a life steeped in the principle of national service, dedicated to the public interest, and I'm delighted that he has graced us and me with his presence today. Now, the organizers have asked me to speak to you on law and the idea of India, and it's in many ways a fitting theme given the current state of our nation. But what does the idea of India even mean? Though the phrase is Rabindranath Tagore's, the idea of India is in some form or another arguably as old as antiquity itself. And numerous are the proofs of the aspiration for cultural unity that appear throughout the history of our civilization. I have written in my book, An Era of Darkness, about how the notion of Bharatvarsh in the Rig Veda, of a land stretching from the Himalayas to the seas, contained the original territorial idea of India, and how the travels of Adi Shankara at the cusp of the 10th century, establishing his mutts in Srinagar, Dwarka, Puri, and Sringeri, helped knit together the spiritual idea of India within what's been called its sacred geography. Lest some see this as a purely Hindu idea, Maulana Azad too has written of how Indian Muslims on the Hajj were all seen by the Arabs as Hindis, whether they were Pathans or Tamils. So the idea of India as one civilization inhabiting a coherent territorial space and a shared history is timeless and universal. However, the idea of India as a modern nation state, based on a certain conception of human rights and citizenship, vigorously backed by due process of law and equality before the law, is a relatively recent and strikingly modern idea. Earlier conceptions of India drew their inspiration from mythology and theology. But the modern idea of India, despite the mystical influence of Tagore and the spiritual and moral influences of Gandhiji and others, is a robustly secular and legal construct based upon the vision and intellect of our founding fathers, notably Ambedkar, Nehru, and Patel in alphabetical order. The preamble of the Constitution itself is the most eloquent enumeration of this vision. In its description of the defining traits of the Indian Republic, in its conception of justice, of liberty, of equality, and fraternity, it firmly proclaims that the law will be the bedrock of the idea of India. In fact, that's what gives us a theme today, because just a couple of days ago, I was in a debate on India Today television, and I found myself saying, very simply, when asked about to defend my idea of India, I said, my idea of India comes from the Constitution. Where does yours originate? To my mind, the role of constitutionalism in shaping the idea of India is a dominant strand in the broader story of the evolution and modernization of Indian society. Every society has an independent relation with the legal systems that govern it. And that's both complex and, especially in our turbulent times, it really continuously and vociferously is contested. It is through this interplay that communities become societies, societies become civilizations, and civilizations acquire a sense of national and historical character. It's no surprise then that while the ancient and the medieval worlds largely celebrated kings and conquerors, since the age of enlightenment, many of the great people who changed the course of their nations and the world for good, and sometimes for the worse, have been lawyers. I just need to mention the name Dr. Ambedkar, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, to illustrate this point, and one could certainly add Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj to that list. These men, and increasingly women, had the vision and the intellect to anticipate the problems and challenges that all civilizations in the modern era have had to confront. In the process, they found the best check and balance mechanism in the book of law, the Constitution, for combating these plagues to protect the interests of all our people in equal measure. The story of humanity over the last few hundred years has been the story of the spread of democracy, rapid industrialization and urbanization, increasingly accompanied by globalization of trade and commerce, and the increasing impact of science and technology on human society and culture. This diversity of challenges can only be addressed if we agree on the ground rules of how we disagree and how we negotiate change. Of course, some societies have confronted these challenges sooner and better. Others have delayed their hour of reckoning at their own peril. I would suggest that the Indian experience in tackling these challenges so far has been of the middling variety. It would have been far worse if not for the idea of India, most eloquently championed by Jawaharlal Nehru and enshrined in the political and legal system created and protected by our Constitution and its architect, Dr. Ambedkar. It is often said that any truism about India can be immediately contradicted by another truism about India. The country's national motto, emblazoned on our governmental crest, is Satyameva Jayate, truth alone triumphs. The question remains, however, whose truth? It is a question to which there are at least 1.4 billion answers, if the last census hasn't undercounted us again. But that sort of answer is no answer at all. And so another answer to these questions has to be sought. And this may lie in a simple insight. The singular thing about India is that you can only speak of it in the plural. There are, in the hackneyed phrase, many Indians. You may be familiar with the American motto, e pluribus unum, out of many one. But in India, if we were to borrow it in dog Latin, it would have to be something like e pluribus pluribus, because everything exists in countless variants. There is no single standard, no fixed stereotype, no one way. Our pluralism is acknowledged in the way India arranges its own affairs. All groups, faiths, tastes, ideologies survive and contend for their place in the sun. At a time when most developing countries opted for authoritarian models of government to promote nation building and to direct development, India chose to be a multi-party democracy. And despite many stresses and strains, including 22 months of autocratic rule during a state of emergency in 1975-76, when even habeas corpus was suspended, and even during our current difficult times, we have remained a multi-party democracy, freewheeling, rumbustious, corrupt, and inefficient perhaps, but nonetheless flourishing. Now, one result is that India strikes many as maddening, chaotic, inefficient, seemingly unpurposeful, as it muddles its way through the second decade of the 21st century. Another, though, or the third decade, I should say now. Another, though, is that India is not just a country. It is an adventure, one in which all avenues are open and everything is possible. India, wrote the British historian E.P. Thompson, is perhaps the most important country for the future of the world. All the convergent influences of the world run through this society, Thompson said. There is not a thought that is being thought in the repeat that, sorry. There is not a thought that is being thought in the West or the East that is not active in some Indian mind. I'm glad a Brit said that and not an Indian. But that Indian mind has been shaped by remarkably diverse forces. Ancient Hindu tradition, myth and scripture, the impact of Islam and Christianity, and 2 centuries of British colonial rule. The result is unique. Many observers abroad have been astonished by India's survival as a pluralist state. But India could hardly have survived as anything else. Pluralism is a reality that emerges from the very nature of the country. It's a choice made inevitable by India's geography and reaffirmed by its history. This means that the idea of India is itself very unusual in today's world. Talking about what Indian nationhood is reminds me of the probably apocryphal story of 2 law professors arguing about a problem. I think Professor Raj Kumar is familiar with this. One says, you know, this is how you can solve the problem, do this and this and this, and you can solve it. But the other law professor says, well, that may work in practice, but will it work in theory? I hope that's not a professor at your law school, Raj. Because the fact is, if you look at the Indian nationhood, Indian nationalism, it's not based on language, since we have at least 22 or 35 Indian languages, depending on whether you follow the constitution or the ethno-linguists. It is not based on geography, because the natural geography of Bhardwaj, as I said, framed by the mountains and the sea, was hacked by the partition of 1947. It is not based on ethnicity, because the idea of the Indian accommodates a diversity of ethnic types, in which many Indians are more in common with foreigners than with other Indians. So Indian Punjabis and Indian Bengalis have more in common ethnically with Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, respectively, than they do with Poonawallahs or Bangaloreans. And it is not based on religion, because we are home to faith, to every faith known to mankind, and Hinduism, which is a faith without a national organization, no established church, no ecclesiastical hierarchy, no Hindu pope, no Hindu Mecca, no uniform beliefs or modes of worship. Hinduism exemplifies as much our diversity as it does our common cultural heritage. I've gone into this in greater detail in my book, Why I'm a Hindu. So Indian nationalism is the nationalism of an idea. The idea of, to stand the Peter Pan expression on its head, the idea of an ever land, emerging from an ancient civilization, united by a shared history, sustained by pluralist democracy under the rule of law. Now, this land imposes no narrow conformities on its citizens. You can be many things in one thing. You can be a good Muslim, a good Keralite, and a good Indian all at once. When I dealt with the horrors of the former civil war, of the civil war in the former Yugoslavia, when I was at the United Nations, Freudian started talking about the narcissism of minor differences, because people descended from the same Slavic tribes that had settled the Balkans in the 7th century were busy massacring and attacking and raping each other. So that's the narcissism of minor differences that separated these different peoples in the Yugoslav civil war. I would argue that in India, we celebrate the commonality of major differences. Rather, to stand Michael Ignatius' famous phrase on its head, I would say we're a land of belonging rather than of blood. In fact, my last book on Indian nationalism is called The Battle of Belonging. So the idea of India, to me, is a one land embracing many. It's the idea that a nation may endure differences of caste, creed, color, culture, cuisine, conviction, costume, and custom, and still rally around a consensus, a democratic consensus around that simple principle that in a democracy under the rule of law, you don't really need to agree all the time, except on the ground rules of how you will disagree. The reason India has survived all the stresses and strains that have beset it for much of the last 75 years almost, and that led so many to predict its imminent disintegration, is that it maintained consensus on how to manage without consensus. Today, some in positions of power seem to be questioning those ground rules, and that sadly is why it is all the more essential to reaffirm them now. Now, what knits this entire idea of India together is, of course, the rule of law enshrined in our constitution. Jawaharlal Nehru's opening remarks when he moved the motion at the newly established Constituent Assembly on 13 December 1946 gives us a view of the immense pressure and responsibility on the lawmakers to ensure that they responded fittingly to the situation and did justice to the task of constitution making. They had to preserve the past idea of India and march towards a future idea of India. Nehruji said, "We are at the end of an era and possibly very soon we shall embark upon a new age." And my mind goes back to the great past of India, I'm quoting here, of course, to the 5,000 years of India's history, from the very dawn of that history, which might be considered almost the dawn of human history, till today. All that past crowds around me and exhilarates me, and at the same time somewhat oppresses me. Am I worthy of that past? When I think also of the future, the greater future, I hope, standing on the sword's edge of the present, between this mighty past and the mightier future, I tremble a little and feel overwhelmed by this mighty task. We have come here, Nehru continued, at a strange moment in India's history. I do not know, but I do feel that there is some magic in this moment of transition from the old to the new. Something of that magic which one sees when the night turns into day. And even though the day may be a cloudy one, it is day after all, for when the clouds move away, we can see the sun later on, unquote. What an evocative way of thinking about that moment, of launching the work of the Constituent Assembly. And we are perhaps once again at a strange moment in India's history. But if we stay in the past, we should also recall Dr. Ambedkar's concluding remarks. So Nehru spoke at the beginning of the assembly and at the end of the assembly, in his famous Grammar of Anarchy speech on November 25, 1949, almost 3 years later, Ambedkar informed us of the maladies of India and the ideal idea of India, which would have to be overcome by the rule of law. That is, the maladies would have to be overcome and the ideal ensured. And in a magisterial speech expressing the idea of India through the prism of politics, law, and social hierarchies, he said, "In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and one vote, one value. In our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. How long shall we continue to live this life of contradictions?" Ambedkar's eloquent assault on discrimination and untouchability for the first time, cogently expanded the idea of India to incorporate the nation's vast neglected underclass. The working instrument of our democracy is, as I said, the Constitution of India. It's a basic framework, and we all know about the scheme of the Constitution, which defines the powers of the main organs of the state, delimits their jurisdictions, demarcates their responsibilities, regulates their relationships with one another and with the people. But the most important contribution of the Constitution to the idea of India was that of representation centered on individuals. The individual citizen was given agency. As Mathur Khosla explained in his recent brilliant book of legal history, India's founding moment, the political apparatus of establishing a constitutional democracy in post-colonial India, a land that was poor and illiterate, divided by caste, religion, and languages, and burdened by centuries of tradition, involved an attempt to free Indians from prevailing types of knowledge and understanding, to place citizens in a realm of individual agency and deliberation that was appropriate to self-rule, and to alter the relationship that they shared with one another. The founders of the Republic chose, and as chairman of the Constitution's drafting committee, Dr. Ambedkar recognized that to impose a liberal constitution upon a society which was not liberal was a big challenge. They saw the principles of liberal constitutionalism, the centrality of the state, non-communal political representation, and so on, as a response to the challenges posed by the burden of democracy. In keeping with contemporary liberal thought, they committed India to a common language of the rule of law, constructed a centralized state and rejected in some ways localism, instituted a model of representation whose units were individuals rather than groups. The key objective, according to Khosla, was to allow Indians to arrive at outcomes agreeable to free and equal individuals. This was not easy. Constitutions are, of course, and Ambedkar explicitly made this point, tools to control and restrain state power. The challenge lies in reconciling restrictions on state power with popular rule to prevent temporary majorities. Since in a democracy, a majority is temporary, though some people forget that, from completely undoing what the Constitution has provided. So Khosla suggests that the founders of the Indian Republic held a conception of democracy that went beyond majority rule and rejected, in Ronald Dworkin's notable phrase, the majoritarian premise. They subordinated politics to law. As Ambedkar put it, the rights of Indian citizens could not be taken away by any legislature merely because it happens to have a majority. The struggle for Indian independence was, after all, not simply a struggle for freedom from alien rule. It was a shift away from an administration of law and order centered on imperial despotism. Thus was born the idea of constitutional morality, meaning the commitment to constitutional means, to its processes and structures, alongside a commitment to free speech, scrutiny of public action, legal limitations on the exercise of power. So this was how the constitution makers intended freedom to flourish in India. Of course, Dr. Ambedkar realized that it's perfectly possible to pervert the constitution without changing its form, by merely changing the form of the administration to make it inconsistent and opposed to the spirit of the constitution. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar argued that constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated. We must realize that our people have yet to learn it, he said. Democracy in India, a famous line of his, is only a top dressing on an Indian soil, which is essentially undemocratic, unquote. He insisted that the directive principles, an unusual feature of the Indian constitution, not found elsewhere, were necessary because although the rules of democracy mandated that the people must elect those who will hold power, the principles confirmed that whoever captures power will not be free to do what he likes with it. At the same time, the Constitution wanted Indians to have a new understanding of authority. They would be liberated through submission to an impersonal force that saw them as equal agents, and that liberated spirit would make possible socio-economic transformation. This was important because to leaders like Nehru, whose vision of democracy entailed equality and a decent living standard for all, and Ambedkar, where including the so-called untouchables was a major concern for him, the establishment of a free and democratic India required the substitution of the economic power of a few rich individuals by a form of state control that could end poverty, end discrimination, reduce unemployment, and improve material conditions. But striking that the Constituent Assembly rejected separate electorates, rejected weighted representation, rejected reservations on the basis of religion. Only days before Indian independence and the partition of British India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, in his capacity as chairman of the Advisory Committee on Minorities and Fundamental Rights, wrote to the President of the Assembly, Rajendra Prasad, to explain why separate electorates have been rejected. Differentiated citizenship on the basis of religion, Patel argued, had already been tried in the colonial era and had led to partition. The answer lay in moving away from a representative framework that recognized identities that were regarded as stable and fixed, and towards a model of citizenship centered on the political participation of individuals. Such a model would allow the categories of majority and minority to be constantly defined and redefined within the fluid domain of politics, and it would thereby offer the greatest form of security. Now, this fundamental difference of opinion continues to haunt our politics today. The nationalist movement was divided between two sets of ideas, held by those who saw religious identity as a determinant of their nationhood, and those who believed in an inclusive India for everyone, irrespective of faith, where rights were guaranteed to individuals rather than to religious communities. The former became the idea of Pakistan, the latter the idea of India. Pakistan was created as a state with a dominant religion, a state that discriminates against its minorities and denies them equal rights. But India never accepted the logic that had partitioned the country. Our freedom struggle was for all, and the newly independent India would also be for all. On the other hand, the Hindutva idea of a Hindu Rashtra, espoused today by the ruling establishment, is the mirror image of Pakistan, a state with a dominant majority religion that seeks to put its minorities in a subordinate place. It is particularly striking in the context of today that the constitution makers explicitly rejected the notion of religion playing any role in citizenship, arguing that each individual voter exercised agency in the democratic project and should not be reduced to the pre-existing loyalties of religious affiliation. For India's founders, one could not be a political agent unless one's political identity was self-created. The Constitution granted representation not to one's pre-established identity of religion, but to one's individual expression of agency. That's why the individual vote was so important. Democratic politics cannot be reduced to the advocacy of preset, pre-established interests. Interests have to be expressed through politics. The constitution of one's identity as a citizen, Khosla explains, was itself a form of freedom. Now, the adaptability of the constitution to the ever-changing realities of national life has also effectively made it a vehicle of social change. Facilitated, of course, by a parliament, which was conceived for that purpose by the constitution, after all, created itself as a self-generating and self-correcting entity, a living document that allowed for its own amendment to meet the changes of the times, subject to the doctrine of the basic structure, of course, that Justice Mathur will remind us, again, an invention of the judiciary. In a way, it reflected the confidence in the people of this land to make adjustments and rise to meet every new challenge to our society. During the past nearly 7 decades of independence, the Constitution, which came into force on 26 January 1950, has been amended over 100 times by Parliament. A creature, really, for that very, creature made for that very purpose by the Constitution. Now, the small-minded may consider the high number of amendments as a weakness of the Constitution, but those with a broader vision would understand that it's actually a sign of its inherent strength, a strength that derives from its ability to be flexible without the risk of self-destruction. It has the exemplary inbuilt ability to adjust to the needs of the times, and the fact that this is enabled through a thoroughly democratic and representative process has been the key to its effectiveness in moving our society forward in a democratic and more broadly inclusive manner. Now, during the journey of the Constitution, there have been innumerable instances which have either corroded or preserved, or even nurtured the idea of India. The founding fathers of our freedom passed the baton of Constitution and law to the next generation. Much progress happened under the purview of one of the founding fathers himself, Pandit Nehru. The First Amendment in 1951 abolished zamindari, placed reasonable restrictions on speech. The Seventh Amendment in 56 laid the foundation of states on linguistic lines. The creation of states, union territories, their autonomy, brought many of the northeastern states and new territories to the Indian Union, provided legitimacy to extending the idea of India to these territories. I'm not going to go through every one of the 100-odd amendments, but just to highlight a few, during the emergency, the 42nd Amendment brought two key principles of India formally into the constitution, socialist and secular. I would argue that it was unnecessary to do so because the idea of India is inseparable from these ideas. But these ideas, the dark period of their birth notwithstanding, remain relevant, and that's why no subsequent government has so far undone them. But even if a government were to undo, take out the word secular, for example, the constitution still remains secular. Other amendments to the constitution, the 23rd, the 45th, 51st, tried to make the idea of India more inclusive, to bring the vulnerable sections into the mainstream. Activist judges have taken the constitution beyond strict legislation to promote human rights and welfare in a series of landmark judgments. We struggled to provide education to all Indian children, and the landmark 86th Amendment in 2009 conferred that right to all children. The Right to Information Act, which Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj helped pass in June 2005, it's a hallmark of how the law guides and derives value from the idea of India. Accountability and disclosure of information is the demand of the Indian population, and today the law enshrined in the constitution of our land emphatically acknowledges their right to do so. Under the right to life under Article 21, the court recognized the right to know that it's indispensable in a participatory democracy, and we must all salute Dr. Bhardwaj's memory for his contribution to do that. Of course, there are some things that yet need to be fixed. I certainly believe that the Victorian era penal code, drafted by Macaulay without consulting any Indians in 1837, enacted by the British in 1861, is full of iniquities that undermine the quality of the rule of law in our country and is ripe for amendment, if not overhaul. These, of course, it's striking that many of the provisions of the penal code have ceased to apply in Britain itself. But we carry on this unfortunate colonial legacy in India. The pernicious sedition law, section 124A, which is daily misused, including by state governments and the lower courts, despite decades of Supreme Court rulings that sedition only applies to incitement to violence. Hosts of examples of gender bias against women also are there in the penal code. So whatever the arguments about some provisions that need to be preserved, I would fully support our late Rashtrapati, President Pranab Mukherjee's appeal in 2016 to scrap the penal code and write a new one, reflecting our experience and needs as independent India. And I hope that the lawyers in this room will be part of that process in the years to come. In the last decade, the Anna Hazare movement raised the question of the role of civil society in determining legislative priorities in our democracy. I think there's no doubt that the Lokpal Bill was introduced by the government in response to the strength of numbers in the streets. And as a member of parliament, and many members of parliament wonder what our role is supposed to be if our lawmaking functions will be encroached upon by civil society on the one hand and the judiciary on the other. But anyway, there is no doubt that today's lawmakers are facing new and tougher challenges than ever before. We haven't even talked about the rapid advancement and penetration of information technology. I chair the parliamentary committee in that domain. Improving social indicators. Everyone in our country seems to have a mobile phone in their hands. Changes in demography. The growing economic prowess of our nation. The rise of new global threats, including non-state threats. Our ever greater international integration. All these impose new constraints on the sovereign function of lawmaking, even as they also allow new opportunities. And that's why I think there's a whole lot that remains to be done. But as I said, the Constitution is a living document. And I believe the Constitution implicitly accepts that promoting governmental accountability is not just an exercise every 5 years in elections. No one can seriously argue that a citizen's democratic rights begin and end with the right to choose his government through voting alone. Amartya Sen brilliantly pointed out in the Argumentative Indian that deliberative democracy requires discussions and engagement. And I've once at Jindal Law School talked about the distinction between law and legitimacy. the greater the extent to which ordinary people are engaged with, concerned by, and empowered to determine their own political destiny, the more they accept the decisions of state institutions, and the more legitimate, therefore, the law becomes to the people. So all of this means that, yes, civil society does and should have an influence on lawmaking, but I'm not suggesting that it should have a direct role, as perhaps the Lokpal example suggests it did. Now, in India, we preserve the national idea through the functioning of our democracy. This could be said to suit the democratic temper of our people. Some people who criticize me for the argument I've just made, saying that India did not begin with the constitution, that we are a civilizational idea. But I want to remind them that our ancient civilization had the history of having sabhas and samitis, where kingdoms and even empires were ruled on the principle of democratic functioning, extending right from the grassroots level in the form of panchayats and councils, which represented the broad as well as specific segments of the populace, to the royal courts where Maharajas took advice from learned and wise elders. This tradition is important to recall because it confirms that both majority as well as minority opinion were given due importance in the formulation of public policy. In a society as diverse and heterogeneous as India, with its numerous groups and socio-religious identities, the law has the responsibility to preserve this diversity, allow each individual to feel secure within it, and yet guide the nation's progressive evolution. So I would try and bring this perhaps overly long lecture towards a conclusion by stressing that our democracy, our thriving free media, our contentious civil society forums, our energetic human rights groups, our universities, when they do what they should be doing in preserving the discussion of ideas, and of course the repeated spectacle of our remarkable general elections, have all made of India a rare example of the successful management of diversity in the developing world. It is, in fact, all of these working together that help promote and expand the idea of India. At the same time, a new and disturbing tendency has arisen in recent times of the free press that I normally celebrate, intruding upon the prospects of justice by conducting trial by media in a number of sensationalized cases. I'm the last person who wished to place any restrictions on press freedom. I've been a staunch advocate of it all my life. But I'm troubled by the large number of instances in which the press, in addition to playing the role of witness and observer, which it must, has also appointed itself prosecutor, judge, jury, and even executioner. I raise the question not just because I myself have been a victim of it, not just because we see new victims arising every day, whether in a suicide case, whether in a drugs case, or whether where there is no case at all, other than those invented for political benefit. But I do believe that all of us in this room must be aware of this new tendency and conscious of its dangers for our democratic and constitutional system. Because after all, judges are also members of our society. They're exposed to our media. And despite their undoubted judicial rectitude, it is difficult to imagine that they are completely uninfluenced by the media they consume daily. And then there is also the threat that we have seen to law and the idea of India from disturbing developments of recent years. Mob rule, vigilantism, lynchings. We've just seen 4 farmers mown down by a car. When these occur, they undermine both the sanctity of the law as the ultimate arbiter of justice and also faith in the law as the cement that binds the idea of India together. It's vital that we reassert the primacy of law by bringing these self-appointed upholders of justice to justice, to teach them the importance of subordinating their self-righteousness to the majesty of the law. India under the rule of law means that only the law can determine what justice is. Now, this is not the occasion to enter into politics, particularly in the presence of a distinguished and retired Supreme Court judge, but I would be remiss if I concluded my lecture without addressing the recent challenge to the idea of India from one recent law, the Citizenship Amendment Act. Since the constitutionality of the act is still before the Supreme Court, I will not enter into the merits of it here. But it's without question the first law to question what I have described a fundamental underpinning of the idea of India, that religion is not the determinant of our nationhood and therefore of our citizenship. Anxiety about the implications of this law created an increase in tensions, sparking nationwide protests that were only forced to abate with the onset of the COVID pandemic, as well as, of course, an eruption of violence that claimed 53 lives in the nation's capital last year and left hundreds injured. It has also injured the idea of India as an inclusive state, which honors the equality of all and guarantees that the state will not practice religious discrimination. Let me turn for answers to a famous speech of Dr. Ambedkar again. This one on November 4th, 1948, on this very subject. Quote, "To diehards who have developed a kind of fanaticism against minority protection, I would like to say two things. One is that minorities are an explosive force which, if it erupts, can blow the whole fabric up of the state. The history of Europe bears ample and appalling testimony to this fact. The other, still Dr. Ambedkar continuing, is that the minorities in India have agreed to place their existence in the hands of the majority. They have loyally accepted the rule of the majority, which is basically a communal majority and not a political majority. It is for the majority to realize its duty not to discriminate against minorities," unquote. Today, India is in the grip of the very majoritarianism that Ambedkar had so presciently warned against. The Prime Minister, our present Prime Minister's great hero, Sardar Patel, had urged in the Constituent Assembly on May 25th, 1949, and I quote, "It is for us who happen to be in a majority to think about what the minorities feel and how we in their position would feel if we are treated in the manner they are treated," unquote. Given the government's oft expressed admiration for the likes of Dr. Ambedkar and Sardar Patel, one can only hope that they will abandon their current approach, which reduces individuals to their religious affiliations and denies them their agency as free citizens of our democratic republic. Of course, it is for the highest court in the land to rule on whether this legislation honors the letter of the Constitution. But many of us feel strongly that it violates the spirit that animates it, the spirit of the very idea of India. Thank you for inviting me to give you my thoughts on law and the idea of India. All the very best to the Bhardwaj family on this special occasion. Thank you to Jindal Global University. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for this insightful and motivating lecture on law, democracy, and the idea of India. Moving on, I would like to now invite Honorable Mr. Justice Ashok Mathur, former judge of the Supreme Court of India, to deliver the presidential address. Honorable Mr. Justice Ashok Mathur is the former Chief Justice of Calcutta High Court and a judge of the Supreme Court of India. Justice Mathur began with his legal career from Rajasthan Court in 1967. Initially, he worked as a government advocate. He was elevated as a judge of the Rajasthan High Court in 1985. He was transferred from Madhya Pradesh High Court to the Calcutta High Court in 1999 as the Chief Justice. Justice Mathur became a judge of the Honorable Supreme Court of India in 2004 and retired from the service in the year 2008. After retirement, he was appointed as the chairman of the 7th Central Pay Commission and Defense Forces. He also headed the Armed Forces Tribunal. Your Lordship, may I request you to deliver the presidential address.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Professor Raj Kumar, my dear Arun, Babiji, and two youngsters. Indeed, it's a great opportunity for me to talk about my old friend, Mr. Rashad Bhardwaj. He has been very, very close friend of mine, and we have been togetherly known to each other for the last 30 years. After hearing Mr. Shashi Tharoor for such beautiful and excellent exposition of the Indian Constitution vis-a-vis the present situation, I don't need to say anything. And I am a great admirer of Mr. Shashi Tharoor because I have read a couple of his books, especially the latest books, the book which is written by him, that is Battle of Belonging. I have read this book known as Why I Am Hindu. I read his book era of darkness, the British Empire, Nehru, the invented of India, and a couple of more books. And I'm great admirer. Especially, I was so impressed about his speech at the Oxford, which is delivered extempore with regard to preparation. Though he spoke very well, and I'm indeed deeply impressed by his thoughts. But in some of the cases, in some of the instances, I have my caveat to file. But hats off to him after having talked on such beautifully on the issue of the democracy. I don't need to say anything, and I don't need to waste your time on that part. I only say about few things about Mr. Bhardwaj. He himself was a great prolific writer, and he also wrote a book which is almost what Mr. Shashi Tharoor has also mentioned, Political, Religious, and Judiciary in India. And it's to another book. He served in 3 prime ministers, the reminiscences of serving prime ministers, and Nehru Gazes. These all 3 books, and he's personally known to me. I have seen him, his attitude towards judiciary and attitude towards the common man. He had great heart, and he was never discriminated on the ground of any religion, thought, or caste. Sometimes, while dealing with the appointments of the judges, he has never distinguished on the basis of the caste. I know some of the cases in which he made an appointment knowing full well that the person who belonged to another political ideology, but he did not hesitate in discharge his duties. During the tenure as Bhardwaj for spending for 30 years, he had been all the time at the great service of the judiciary, and all the new rules framed on judiciary, especially with regard to service condition, credit must go to him. We started career in 1985 at the salary of 3,500, and today the salary is minimum of a judge of Supreme Court 2,50,000. The beginning was and foundation was laid down by him for a long time. I remember very small anecdote which he told me when the service condition are sought to be considered in the cabinet. One of the judge before the Prime Minister said it that why don't you add fuel charges, burial charges for the judges also. He stood up, but the Prime Minister stopped him and snubbed the honorable judge, honorable minister, saying that please behave yourself. Apart from that, as a judge, as a minister, he has made great contribution in development of law, depending on the case delivered by the judgment to the Supreme Court. His last idea was with regard to Panchayat Raj at village level. Though he could not succeed in that, his mission was that to begin with, a Panchayat Raj at the beginning will solve a lot of problems, and especially with regard to areas, people will need not to come right up to the Supreme Court. Next, his fancy was with regard to ICDR, and he was the person who started this, and his concept was that he wanted to make India as one of the hub for the international arbitration. He succeeded and got a wonderful building established in the Delhi only, and it's still functioning with different administration. He was a great friend and a nice human being. During the tenure as a governor of the Karnataka, I remember a case in which he called the chief minister and told him when minorities was, atrocities were committed against minorities. His contribution to the development of the law, he was there to lead many enactments which proved ultimately an asset for the country. After what Mr. Tharoor has said with regard to the development of the Constitution and its speeches quoting from the Constituent Assembly. I don't need to say anything because they are all known to everybody. But I must say that the way of putting things by him is par excellence. And I'm already said it, I'm deeply impressed by his thought and on some of the issues which he has talked about. But I'll not talk all these issues because ultimately it may culminate into politics, which doesn't behove a Supreme Court judge to talk these days. However, I'm still confident that India is on the progress path, and some of the legislation which have been brought upon requires or necessitated looking to the present situation. The country is developing, and with the development of the country's progress, we need to have the laws. Say the Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, and other old laws does require a vast changes in them, because after those 47 to this year, we have changed a lot. So many new scientific technologies has brought into field, which requires a new legislation on the subject, which have been already just mentioned by the Chief Justice of India also. And I'm sure the Parliament are also quite concerned about it, that these new criminal offenses, because of the development in technology, need to be curbed, and I'm sure things will be taken care. And I want Constitution not to be static. The situation which was obtaining at the time when the Constitution was framed way back in 1947 till today, things have changed considerably, and it requires that it amended from time to time. Though we have amended the Constitution more than 100 times, still we require to amend the Constitution, and I think the Parliament is seized of the matter. Some are, of course, have some political implications, but leave apart that, but it requires a changes. No country or no nation can survive on a static situation. One has to, for going ahead, need to do changes looking to the times. And I'm sure things will be taken care, and person like Shashi Tharoor, being member of the Parliament, will be conscious of it and taking a proper resolution on that. This seminar, which has been organized in honor of my friend, Mr. Bhardwaj, is a great contribution to his memory. And I'm very grateful to especially Bhabiji, Prafullata Devi, who has been all the time behind it, that we must have some seminar in memory of late Shri Bhardwaj, and this was the beginning. And I understand that should not be the last one. Future also, we will continue to have a person of eminence like Shashi Tharoor to enlighten us on the subject. And again, my thanks goes to Bhardwaj's grandsons Karan and Gautam, who have taken this legal profession, and I wish them best of luck. And finally, my thanks to Mr. Arun for providing me this opportunity, and I bow my head before his memory and my thoughts with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Mathur, for a very inspiring set of reflections on the life and legacy of Dr. Bhardwaj. Of course, there are too many questions for us to ask Shashi to answer, so I'm not going to do that. We are running out of time as well. Shashi, I have one question which is not connected to your lecture itself. It was so beautiful, as Justice Mathur said. This question is for you both as a politician and as a thinker. One of the remarkable things about Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj was he was one of the most likable politicians, and he was liked by people beyond his political party. And people continued to meet him and be in touch with him long after he was not in power. Now, I have, without naming anybody, I can say that I have seen ministers after the day they demit office, their stock market value reduces so badly that nobody even wants to acknowledge them in an elevator, let alone trying to visit them at home. So I want to ask you that what makes somebody like Bhardwaj so likable long after he left office, and what is the lesson that other politicians can possibly learn out of his life?
And I was just saying that obviously one of the remarkable things about Mr. Dr. Bhardwaj is that over the many decades of his engagement in public life, he had built up an extraordinary set of connections, partially because he himself was so helpful and obliging, as you know from your experience, as I know from mine. And as a result, those connections transcended anything to do merely with the transactional issues involved in dealing with somebody because of their function. So when you have a friendship of that nature, you tend to maintain the contact. So a lot of people stayed in touch with him even when he had ceased to be in office. That's one factor. The second, I think, is his own willingness to stay engaged. See, he was not somebody who just went off and shut the door and retired. He was involved. I remember meeting him at your home, for example, just a couple of months before he passed away. And there he was discussing public issues, current politics, asking me questions, talking to the other guests that you had that evening. And it was a sign that this is not someone who will disengage from the larger issues that animated him when he was in office. So that too kept people involved. And finally, I would say there's the helpfulness. You are somebody who stayed very close to him because you've never forgotten, I think, the helpfulness he showed you when you were first setting about developing the germ of the idea of Jindal Global University into what it has now become. And that sort of thing, somebody like him, that helpful nature, that kindness of spirit, essentially invites reciprocation. So if you ask me what advice I would give other politicians, it would be to try and be more like Bhardwaj. Certainly eschew arrogance, eschew excessive, shall we say, belief in one's own press releases in the positions one holds, and rather focus instead on the essential human qualities, because that's all you're left with when you cease to be a minister or a governor or an MP or whatever. It's the kind of human being you are that will endure and that other people will recognize when the positions you hold no longer matter. And that's certainly a lesson that Dr. Bhardwaj's life teaches all of us.
Professor Raj Kumar, of course, on this subject, I can throw some light because I had association with him for the last 30 years. And even after his retirement, and when I meet him at his house, you find that people from different political parties were surrounding him. And he was sparing his experience and sharing his experience and giving a proper advice to them also. And which is, of course, not available these days for the present set of politicians. But he was very open to both the political people from life. And I can tell you from my experience that one of the judges belonged to another political party, even elected MLA of that particular political party in this Rajasthan. His time came for becoming Chief Justice, despite his opposition, knowing full well that he belonged to a political setup. He was made to be Chief Justice of Assam High Court. So was a case of Rajasthan, when a judge was only returning short of 6 months. Normally, the practice is that person who is less than 6 months should not be disturbed from his own state. Knowing full well that he belongs to an opposite party, he fought for him and saw him that he's appointed as a Chief Justice of Rajasthan. These two experiences stand out for his large-heartedness. He said, no, we must respect the traditions, not the persons. That's why the other politicians, when they are out for all.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Well, we are indeed coming to the end of this wonderful celebration. I'm going to now request tributes by the family members of Dr. Bhardwaj. I'm going to invite Mr. Arun Bhardwaj, Senior Advocate, as well as Dr. Prafullata Bhardwaj to share their tributes.
Namaskar. Thank you very much, Dr. Sahab. Professor Raj Kumar Sahab, Mr. Tharoor, Honorable Member of Parliament, Honorable My Lord Justice A.K. Mathur, Pratibha ji, and other distinguished guests. On behalf of the family, I would like to express my great gratitude to all of us who are present here, and particularly to Mr. Tharoor and Dr. Raj Kumar, Justice Mathur, everybody, for sparing so much of time and for this first Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj Memorial Lecture. As far as so much has been said about him in the documentary and in various speeches, as far as his public life is concerned, but as far as his private life is concerned, as a son, I saw so many things at such closest possible quarter right from my childhood. And there are so many things, of course, it's not time, and there is no time also to share all these things right now. But definitely I am trying to pen down something, and in future it will be coming out. Now, as far as tributes are concerned, it's very difficult thing for a son to give tributes to a father, because my father for me, he was father, and then he was more like a friend and also a professional colleague. Because I decided to become a lawyer after seeing him, after seeing his hard work. He was like my idol. And I used to see him early in the morning, getting ready at 8 o'clock in the morning and leaving for his office, and come back at 11 o'clock at night. And this kind of hard work made him reach wherever he could. From a small village, a Rohtak Gadi Sampla, from a small village school, God school, which he never forgot. Ultimately, after becoming governor, he went back there and he got the building reconstructed. So from that stage up till then, I closely saw him. And I can say with all confidence and with all humility that I was so blessed and privileged to have a father like him. He was only one of the persons I think I have seen in my life who was a perfect human being, and he was a paragon of virtue. I have seen him helping people, going out of the way. I have seen him fighting for people whom he never knew, particularly in case of appointment of judges also, like in case of one case of Andhra Pradesh, the judge was superseded about 5-6 times. He is no more now. Then he somehow managed to meet my father, and my father took up his case up till Supreme Court and with the Prime Minister, with the President, and saw to it that he became a judge. He was so helpful. But unfortunately, that person, Honorable Judge, he died just a few months after assuming office. So he was very helpful. He was a self-made man. And as far as family is concerned, I think loss of a father and loss of the eldest person in the family, head of the family, is very difficult, and it cannot be in any manner be compensated, or anything can be done about that. He is no more with us. The country has lost a big legal luminary. As far as we are concerned, I have lost my father, my other, and the entire family miss him every day. That not even a single day goes by when we don't think about him. Whenever we are passing through his bedroom and my mother is sitting there, it becomes very emotional for us to pass from there. And every day we think about him, talk about him, about his contribution to the society, to the people, his friends. And as it was said by Professor Saab, that he was very popular. Of course, he was popular. Thank you so much for that. And because he used to help everybody, he would help particularly the downtrodden, the people, and some of his detractors also. There are so many things, but the time is short. So at this stage, I would just like to thank everybody for coming together and giving this memorial lecture and remembering him. And from the entire family, myself, my mother, who is also there, my sons, we thank everybody. Thank you very much for this kind gesture. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Mrs. Prafullata Bhardwaj for her reflections.
Thank you very much. I am very grateful to Shri Shashi Tharoor and myself, Ashok Mathur, and other who are joining this function, this program of Dr. Shri Bhardwaj, former Union Minister of India and former Governor of Karnataka. Particularly, I would like to thank Dr. C. Raj Kumar, Vice Chancellor of UP Jindal University, for organizing and putting together this memorial lecture. A famous couplet by Tagore embodies the character and personality of Dr. Bhardwaj. The couplet is following as I slept and dreamt that life is beauty. I woke up and saw that life is beauty. Then I worked hard and found that beauty is beauty. It is very difficult to explain everything for my husband. He was a very caring, very loving, and very intelligent person. But I'm trying to tell something. Great Dr. Sridhar Bhardwaj was a true karma yogi. He believed in karma. He was a learned and dignified man of principle. He was always dedicated to his duties and worked hard in his profession. He was of the belief that sincere hard work is the key of success. He was a spiritual person, very versed in Vedas and other religious literature, particularly with the lofty principle of Upanishads. He great admirer of literature and also authored many books. He was very fond of Urdu shairis as well. He would often quote these lines from a favorite Urdu शायर. तू इधर उधर की ना बात कर, ये बता के काफिला क्यों लूटा. He did his MA in Hindi and was fond of Hindi literature as well. He greatly admired Jaishankar Prasad's book Kamayani and a poem by Mathur Gupta. The few lines from this poem I am going to tell you. विचार लो कि मृत्यु हो, न मृत्यु से डरो कभी. मरो परंतु यूं मरो कि याद जो करें सभी. हुई न यूं सुमृत्यु तो प्रथा मरे प्रथा जिए. मरा नहीं वही कि जो जिया ना आपके भी. This time it is very difficult to speak out. You know, I will put it that he was a very affectionate person and a caring husband. Dr. Bhardwaj was a man of vast knowledge and was an intellectual personality. He was a Socratic thinker, combining traditional Indian values with a modern outlook. He was a simple, affectionate person and believed in the virtues of a secular society. As a lawyer, he worked on several famous cases like Bhardwaj murder case, Gulcha murder case. In the legal fraternity, he was known for his liberal thinking, punctuality, and being a humble person. He was a benevolent, loving, and was sincere to his friends and colleagues. He is fondly remembered in the leaders' fraternity. As a Union Law Minister, he strongly believed in the constitutional values of liberty, security, and equality for all before the law. Being a true parliamentarian, he believed in Sabdharma Samman and believed in brotherhood among the people. He believed that women should be honored and should be respected with equal rights in our society, and tabled a bill in parliament to reflect this belief in Hindu succession law. As the governor of Karnataka and Kerala, he was popular and respected by the people. Whenever he would address the public, his beliefs about relevant social topics resonated with the people. His political career started with Srimati Indira Gandhi's cases when he was a very young lawyer. He distinguished himself through his hard work, dedication, and focus as a legal thinker. Dr. Hansal Bhardwaj was a man of people, a caring father, loving husband, and the obedient son. His association in our life will always be unforgettable. His hard work memories are always with us and will continue to guide us. His blessings will always be with us. Thank you, all of you. Raj Kumar, it is very, very difficult to speak out and explain everything. You know better everything. And Shashi Tharoor also know that we met sometime in Karnataka. He knows very well. And Bhai Saab, and they are just like our family member. And I am very grateful to you, all of you, and the other person who are attending this memorial lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. To conclude this evening's proceedings, I'm going to invite Professor Sridhar Patnaik, our Registrar, OP Jindal Global University, to say a few words as word of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Professor Raj Kumar, Honorable Mr. Justice Ashok Mathur, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Dr. Prafullata Bhardwaj, Mr. Arun Bhardwaj, and family members of Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj, distinguished invitees, and the audience who are connected through virtual mode. Good evening, everyone. Let me begin by saying there can be no better way to honor and commemorate the contributions of Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj than by instituting a memorial lecture in his name. On behalf of the OP Jindal Global University, I would like to extend my gratitude to the family of Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj for their support and encouragement to this endeavor. We are particularly grateful to Dr. Prafullata Bhardwaj and Mr. Arun Bhardwaj and all the family members for gracing the lecture with their presence and for the reflections on this auspicious occasion. Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj, as we all know, is an inspiration, and considering the exalted position he occupies in our collective memory, it is therefore our privilege to honor his contributions as a great visionary leader. He served the nation by protecting and building a cohesive society in accordance with his beliefs. It is therefore befitting that the lecture focused on the theme law, democracy, and the idea of India. Dr. Bhardwaj always believed education to be crucial to strengthening democracy in India. Not only did he talk about education, he also stressed the importance of the upliftment of women and the need to treat them with respect for any democracy to succeed. It is only axiomatic that these values are in consonance with the values espoused by Sri O.P. Jindal, who always believed that education, access, and opportunities could change the world, and that students go on to become change makers, a cause that is also championed by the Honorable Chancellor and benefactor of JGU, Mr. Naveen Jindal. We are beholden to Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj for introducing us to Mr. Naveen Jindal, and we are also immensely grateful to our benefactor, Mr. Naveen Jindal, for establishing the university and for his support over the years. I must therefore say today's memorial lecture is a true tribute to a visionary person, Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj. On this momentous occasion, I would like to thank Dr. Shashi Tharoor for accepting our invitation and delivering the lecture on law, democracy, and the idea of India. Mr. Tharoor has always inspired us with his views on the idea of India on various occasions. We are indeed delighted to hear his inspirational, thoughtful, and enriching remarks on a complex area given the multicultural, heterogeneous, and post-colonial nature of the Indian society. Metaphorically speaking, every time we hear Dr. Tharoor, I am reminded of an anonymous quote. You sit by a riverside and hear the flow of the water, you will find peace and meaning in the rhythm. And such is the nature of his speech and presentations. We are also fortunate that Honorable Justice Mr. Ashok Mathur had delivered the presidential address and shared his reflections on the lecture and his first-hand account on the contributions made by Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj to the progressive development of law, institution building, and nation building. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my gratitude to Justice Mr. Ashok Mathur for accepting the invite and thus for his support to the JGU fraternity. I would like to thank everyone for keeping alive the memory of an iconic leader who not only served the nation, but also supported us to a great extent in the establishment of the OP Jindal Global University. Without Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj's support, we would not have been able to reach where we are today. As the Vice Chancellor remarked, and in the memory of Dr. Bhardwaj's long-standing contributions to the field of law and public, we have decided to undertake numerous activities ranging from a moot court, a scholarship, and faculty fellowship, amongst other activities. We are committed to these activities, and the commitment is based on access to justice and standards of excellence in advocacy, institution, and nation building pursued by Dr. H.R. Bhardwaj, which is the inspiration to commemorate our activities in his memory. And we are certain that the activities that we are going to undertake will encourage students of law, scholars, and legal practitioners to achieve excellence in areas of law and public policy, thus contributing to the interpretation and development of law and jurisprudence in the areas of public law. I'm grateful to members of the Chancellor's family, all our distinguished guests, parliamentarians, honorable judges of the Supreme Court of India and High Courts, and vice chancellors and professors, and senior government officials, members of the bar, friends from the media, and members of the JGU Governing Council for joining us on this occasion. In closing, I would like to say that I'm confident that through our efforts and commitment, we will be able to educate more and more young people and encourage them to work towards a cohesive society and towards nation building. I once again extend my gratitude to family members of Dr. Bhardwaj and Dr. Shashi Tharoor and Honorable Justice Mr. Ashok Mathur and everyone who attended the program. Thank you very much.